not been paying attention, there has been another coup that has happened in Africa, this time in the country of Gabon. Now, it was just a couple weeks ago, we discussed the coup that happened in Niger. And we talked about how basically military group got together and decided to remove their current leader because the current leader was embracing neocolonialism. They were in bed basically with Macron, the leader of France, and that the people basically were being exploited because of the resources there. So France was taking uranium from countries like Niger, using it for their people in France. Meanwhile, people in Niger barely had power, right? Again, another country rich in resources, but the people are poor. Now we see a similar situation, but this time with the country Gabon. And so what I'm predicting is that what happened in Niger can actually spread across Africa, where more countries are starting to push back against Western imperialism and neocolonialism, and telling these Western leaders, get your hands out of our country, get your hands off our resources, even if that means that we have to remove our own leaders, which has been basically approved by the West. That's why the people that are in those positions are there to begin with. If we have to remove our own leaders to get what we want for our people in our country, that is what we are going to do. And now we see the situation happening in Gabon, where they decided to do the similar situation that happened in Niger, where they decided to remove their leader and send a strong message to the West. Let's get into this clip here from One TV.
African nations are witnessing a spate of military coups. After Niger, it's now Gabon. A group of senior military officers announced seizing power and placing the president under house arrest minutes after the presidential election results were out, giving Ali Bongo Ondimba a third term in power. The military takeover in Gabon was announced live on the television channel Gabon 24 by a group of Gabonese military officers. They claimed that Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba was placed under house arrest and one of his sons has been arrested for treason. The officers claimed they represented all security and defense forces in the African nation. They rejected the election results, announcing closure of all borders until further notice. The group also announced that state institutions were dissolved with immediate effect. The military coup came just hours after the presidential election results were announced by the State Election Committee that declared President Ali Bongo Ondimba had won the election with 64% of the vote early on Wednesday morning. Within minutes of the announcement, loud sounds of gunfire could be heard in the center of the capital, Libreville.
So this is just another example where obviously the people in Gabon have basically said that, no, we didn't elect this leader. The person that you said has actually won. This is not who we chose. But that's who the West wants in charge of those countries. Now, why would the West do that? They want a leader in charge of these countries that is going to agree with Western imperialism. They're going to be okay with someone like Macron taking their resources. So oftentimes what you see in some of these countries in Africa, some of these leaders that are in those positions were actually propped up by Western countries like France or us here in the United States. And we've seen this happen all across the world. And now we are starting to see, along with the BRICS alliance that is continuing to expand, and other countries are joining BRICS as we speak, including an ally of the US like Saudi Arabia. And you also see other countries starting to rise up and push back against these Western powers. This is a turning point in this world when it comes to power. It's not just about Russia and China. It's also about the possibility and the idea that these countries can govern themselves, that these countries can lead themselves without any intervention from Western countries.
In a video appeal, deposed President Ali Bongo, who has been placed under house arrest, urged his supporters to rise up against the military coup in Gabon.
So you see here, you see what they did? So they basically painted over the new leader's face. And so the leader, the gentleman that they said is actually the winner, he's under house arrest. So he told the people to basically, no, push back against these results, push back against this. And that's what they did. So we'll have to see what happens. Les, I'm going to continue to play this, but we're going to have to see what happens after this. And I want to bring this up because it was just announced, and I'm going to talk to him next week. It was just announced recently that Imran Khan, his sentence has actually been suspended, his jail sentence. Now, you look at someone like Imran Khan, again, they were trying to get him out. That was the U.S. government that pushed Pakistani officials to remove Imran Khan and to put him in jail because, again, that's what the West wanted. The West wanted someone that was actually going to go along with this war in Ukraine. And Imran Khan chose to remain neutral and didn't want anything to do with it. So what do they do with those types of those leaders who choose to remain neutral? The West comes in and say, you got to go. What do they do with those leaders or with candidates that run and don't want to agree with imperialism? The West comes in and say, you're not going to be able to win. So essentially, these people don't have control over their own countries. So this is something that has to change. Now, I don't know if I'm 100% in favor of coups, so to speak. Those can end up deadly and dangerous to people as well. But at this point, I also don't know what to tell the people to do, because what else are they supposed to do in order to push back against this behavior that's coming from the West?
I'm Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of Gabon, and I'm to send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world to tell them to make noise, For the people here have arrested me and my family. My son is somewhere, my wife is in another place, and I'm at the residence. Right now, I'm in the residence. And nothing is happening. I don't know what's going on. So I'm calling you to make noise, really. I'm thanking you. Thank you.
Now, according to reports, every vote held in Gabon since the country's return to a multi-party system in 1990 has ended in violence. Clashes between government forces and protesters after the 2016 election killed several people. In anticipation of post-electoral violence, many people in the capital fled to other parts of the country or left Gabon altogether. Before polls closed last Saturday, Gabon's government had announced a nationwide curfew and cut off internet access. After the announcement of the coup, General Brice Oligui Nguema, head of the Presidential Guard of ousted President Ali Bongo Ondimba, was carried in triumph by hundreds of soldiers. The cries of Oligui, President. France, which has economic interests in Gabon, has condemned the coup, saying it is closely monitoring the situation. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that France is following events in Gabon with the greatest attention. France is the former colonial power in Gabon, whose influence in Africa is seen as being undermined by...
Let me think about what he just said. Think about what he just said here, guys. Watch this when he talks about France's colonial power. Listen to this.
French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that France is following events in Gabon with the greatest attention. France is the former colonial power in Gabon, whose influence in Africa is seen as being undermined.
He says that France is a former colonial power in Gabon, and it says that their influence in Africa is being undermined. My question to that is, why are they allowed to influence Africa in the first place? This is something we need to think about. Who are they, including the prime minister, who are they to say what countries they can influence? Why isn't France just focusing on their self and their own people, right? Didn't you guys just have a pension reform protest that lasted for weeks? Aren't the people in France upset at the pension reforms? Aren't people upset with Macron? Shouldn't you focus on your own people and your own problems? But no, they're focusing on other countries like Gabon because they need the resources in those countries. It doesn't matter to them if the people there don't get to share their own resources. It doesn't matter to them if the people there are struggling, if the people there are poor, if the people there are starving. They're just trying to take what works best for them, not what works best for the people in Gabon. Let's continue. Even the name Gabon, that sounds French to me.
By a series of recent coups that have toppled friendly governments. Meanwhile, China says it is also monitoring the situation closely. Chinese spokesperson called on all sides in Gabon to resolve differences through dialogue and restore normal order as soon as possible. China has also called for the personal safety of deposed President Ali Bongo Ondimba.
When they talk about personal safety, hold on, this piece right here. When they get into China.
Dialogue and restore normal order as soon as
Restore normal order as soon as possible. Normal order according to who? Define normal. You see, the normal order that he's referring to, that definition is what China and France want to happen in Gabon. Think about this for a second. They want them to do what they tell them to do. That's their idea of normal order. Let's continue.
Possible. China has also called for the personal safety of deposed President Ali Bongo Ondimba. Ali Bongo Ondimba had visited Beijing in April and met with President Xi Jinping, who declared him an old friend of the Chinese people. Russia, too, has reacted to the developments, stating that it was concerned by the situation in Gabon and are closely following what is going on there.
They are concerned not just because there was a coup, but they are concerned because the people rose up. And if the people rise up and there's more of them, the people in Gabon, than there are of the military powers in these Western countries, then that means that the Western powers are losing their control over those countries. And that's what they don't want to happen.
Wilson Kembo is a political and security risk consultant from West Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Wilson, thank you very much for making time for us and welcome to We on Wild is One. Many thought that the Gabon elections is a done deal. President Ali Bongo portrayed a picture of carrying his family legacy forward. Many even thought it would be an obvious win for Bongo until the internet was cut. Then doubts started coming in. What might have infuriated the military for them to take this action?
Firstly, I have a feeling that the coup in Gabon is slightly different to what has happened in Guinea, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Because this coup, I have a feeling, while in the other countries, the military there have taken power so that they will stay in power. I have a feeling that this time around in Gabon, the military are actually trying to restore the constitutional democracy in the country, which they believe that has been manipulated by one family for over 6 decades.
So he's saying that he believes, in reference to this coup when compared to Niger, that the people actually want to restore I think he said the Constitution. Yeah, the Constitution that was there prior to this particular family. Now, listen to this. He's saying they've been manipulated. Excuse me, can't talk tonight. Manipulated by one family for over 6 decades. That's a political dynasty. That would be like if we had George Bush Sr. or George H.W. Bush, then George Bush, then Jeb Bush. Then any more Bushes left? Let me know. But you get the point, right? That would be like if we had Bill Clinton, then Hillary Clinton, then Chelsea Clinton, and then whoever else that's a Clinton. Why are political dynasties allowed to even exist? Think about this for a second. That can't be healthy. That can't be healthy for the people in the country at all. That's why part of the reason why they rose up. They're like, wait a minute now. We want new leadership. Why does it just continue to just slide through your family? That's something to think about. I have a big pet peeve about political dynasties.
Wilson, unlike Niger, like you mentioned there, Gabon is not part of ECOWAS. With that in mind, what regional body can save this tiny nation, and how much influence does France have over Gabon? Can they save the situation?
France, they just like Gabon, like the other countries, France over the years has been undermined by anti-colonial sentiments that have actually been manipulated by the politicians to curtail or to divert the blame for their failure to govern to the French. So for the other countries, there have actually been other foreign influences beyond France that have actually been in support of this coup. Especially Russia, there's a footprint, Russian footprint in most of the country, which is quite different to Gabon, because Gabon has got a completely different economic status, as well as the situation in Gabon was slightly different to the other countries, because Gabon economically is one of the well-off countries in the region.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? So you got to remember who he's there to represent. Remember, he's in the UK. Nico had a really good vid on this. Nico said France and the US have been extracting resources from Gabon for decades. 32% of the population lives in poverty, while the deposed president and his father, who ruled before him, have poverty worth tens of millions. Africa is done with neo-colonialism. So I want you to compare what Nico just said to what that gentleman just said. Remember, he's in the UK. He's representing the West. See how they use someone who has an African face, but he represents the West. So he's telling you, oh, it's this country is well off. But how are the people? How are the people? Let's listen to what Nico has to say. I thought he did a really good job with this video.
France is just having a horrible month as another one of their African puppets was just overthrown, this time in Gabon. That's right, earlier today, Ali Bongo was overthrown, and as you can see here, the people of Gabon are just all torn up about it. Now, of course, some of you may be wondering, why would the people of Gabon prefer a military junta as opposed to the quote-unquote democracy they may have had before? So Gabon is actually one of the largest exporters of oil in the world. And
boom, resources. I told you, they're there for resources. Oil. Let's go back again, because there's more. It's not just oil.
Gabon is actually one of the largest exporters of oil in the world. And 50% of that oil is exported to the United States. Gabon is also the fourth largest exporter of minerals on the planet. Two of those minerals being uranium, which we know France needs, especially given the coup in Niger and situation, and manganese, which has many applications.
So we have France stealing uranium from Niger and from Gabon. They're taking uranium from multiple countries at the same time. In that interview with that gentleman from the UK, this is not mentioned. See, this is the piece, guys. This is the piece. Manganese has many applications.
One of which is acting as a filler for batteries, which we know will be huge given this power struggle that we are seeing come about because of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So given those facts and the fact that France has at least 110 companies in Gabon, you think that the people of Gabon would be pretty well off, right? Well, at least the former president benefited from it, considering he had 70 bank accounts, 39 apartments, 2 Ferraris, 6 businesses, 3 Porsches, and a Bugatti.
You see this? This is the problem. The unequal distribution of wealth. The president has all these cars. These aren't cheap cars. It's not like the president has like a Toyota and a Honda over here. Over 30 apartments and 70 bank accounts. Who has 70 bank accounts? They're corrupt. They're corrupt. And you wonder why the people are angry. But this is who the West wants in because it benefits them in reference to resources.
It's 42 years of ruling, and the president who is just overthrown is the son of the former president who has been ruling ever since. So I'm sure he's not too far removed from that life of luxury either. But as for the people of Gabon, well, there's about 2.3 million people living there, and 32% of them live in extreme poverty, surviving off of only roughly $5 a day.
Could you live off of $5 a day? Think about it now. $5 a day. Could you live off of that? How would you pay your rent? How would you pay your utility bill? You probably wouldn't be able to pay that utility bill. You probably would have no power. Unequal distribution of wealth,
which is absolutely unacceptable and ridiculous considering the insane amount of natural resources they have at their disposal. It's really starting to look like Africans are fed up with the West. You're either going to do business the right way, or they're going to oust your puppet, and they'll figure it out themselves. Either way, it looks like neocolonialism in Africa is dying, and I, for one, am absolutely here for it.
Bingo. Now, it wasn't always this way. When you look at someone like Macron, Macron actually, at one point in time, did not agree with neocolonialism, or at least that's what he said. I want to take you back to a time when he was running for office, when he said something different.
The age of France-Afrique is over. I'm not the one who's saying this. This is what Emmanuel Macron said in the month of March earlier this year as he began his four-nation tour of Africa. For those who are not familiar, France-Afrique refers to the French sphere of influence in Africa. This was France's post-colonization strategy of propping up dictators in its erstwhile colonies, to set up military bases and to maintain its stranglehold on the resources of the nations of Central and West Africa, even though they become politically independent. What is interesting about Emmanuel Macron is this. He is the first French president to be born after the end of France's colonial rule in Africa. In 2017, when he was still campaigning for the top job, Emmanuel Macron had famously declared that colonialism is a crime against humanity.
You see that? You see how people change? You see how these politicians change? They talk a good game. So in the beginning, Macron said colonialism was a crime against humanity, but he seems to be fine with it now. People change when they get into office.
And once he was elected the president, during his visit to Burkina Faso in November 2017, Emmanuel Macron won himself a lot of fans when he said, and I quote him here, "I'm from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do."
I am from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do. But here he is telling Africa what to do. You see how people, they're all the same. It doesn't matter if it's a candidate in the United States or if it's a candidate in France. They all sell a good game when they're running for office, right? But once they're in, they continue doing what their predecessors did. This is why they trusted him. This is why people in Africa trusted him, because he said he was opposed to this. And yet here he is.
But the question is this: has France really stopped meddling in the affairs of the Western and Central African nations? Well, take the example of Niger, the nation with the most recent coup in Africa. On the 26th of July, when the pro-Western but democratically elected government of Mohamed Bazoum was ousted, Emmanuel Macron was quick to react. Macron was categorical in his statement that he would not tolerate any attack against France or its interests, and Paris would retaliate immediately and uncompromisingly. Now, France has got every right to defend its interests in any part of the globe that it wants. But the obvious question that springs up is this: what really are French interests that France wants to defend in Niger?
And we've answered that question already. That is resources, uranium, etc. I disagree with that statement where he said France has the right to defend their interests in whatever country they want. No, I disagree with that because obviously that can be exaggerated. And then where are the limitations? If you think that you can defend your interests in whatever country you want, by what means? And what is the limit? So think about that, for example. But that's to show you how once upon a time, Macron didn't believe in this either, or said he didn't believe in it, but here he is practicing it. All of the Western allies, they're all together on this. And that's the thing. It's not just France. The US also had interest here as well in reference to the resources. So a lot of these countries that people refer to as third world countries, again, they are rich in resources that are exploited. These people are exploited. These people are paid very little. Like they told you, people there were making like $5 a day. The people there are struggling, and the Western countries are doing well, stealing their resources. We'll keep an eye on this one, just like Niger, but I don't think this will be the last one. I don't think this will be the last one. JB says they need the resources in Gabon, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger so the French can enjoy wealth that gives them the pensions that they're striking about. The French got it good off the backs of Africans. And this goes back to what we've said before, coming from Second Thought. Second Thought has said this on his channel multiple times, that a lot of times some of these countries that have these universal programs, they're actually exploiting people. They may not be exploiting their own people, but oftentimes that exploitation tends to happen in the global south. So this is something that we have to remember. Pete says he tells Africa what to do. He just doesn't come. There you go. Bingo. Marvin says you can defend what you stole. Shout out to Kit from Hardlands. Welcome, Kit. And Top JJ, imagine French interests in the US. Right. Imagine. So one other thing I want to add, the name Gabon comes from the Portuguese word gabao, meaning cloak. Early explorers thought the estuary of the Como River by the capital of Libreville was the shape of a cloak. So there you go. Thank you so much for that, Eric. Ding, ding, ding.